Hello everyone and welcome to my review for Jujutsu Kaisen chapter 164. We got a very good chapter this week, and I mean a very, very good chapter. I'm very excited to talk about this. Just a quick thing before we get in, subscriber goal for 2021 is hitting 4,000 by the end of the year. We just hit 3,800 a few days ago, so, if you're watching this and you haven't already, you should definitely subscribe. If everyone like you does that, I'm sure we'll reach our goal in no time. So, this chapter starts off right out of the gate, domain expansion. I went back and checked, because when I saw this, I was like, holy shit, when was the last time we actually got a domain expansion? It's been almost a year. 2 days from now, as of recording this, November 8th, will have been 1 year since when Mahito did the 0.2 second domain expansion. Okay? It's been fucking forever. So, good to see domain expansions still kind of have a bit of weight to them. If you want to be, even more sort of specific, how long has it been since we got a new domain expansion? Oh, it's been almost a year and a half since we got Dagon's domain expansion. I don't remember what the exact name of it was. Hold on, let me look it up right now. It was Skanda of the Captivating Horizon. I think that's what it was. Horizon of the Captivating Skanda. Okay, so I had it in the reverse order. Great. It's been a long time since we've had a new domain expansion, and as you guys know, domain expansions are one of the most interesting parts of Jujutsu Kaisen, because they are pretty much a physical manifestation of someone's techniques and a reflection of their character. And for Higuruma, his domain expansion is basically a really old-fashioned courtroom surrounded by a bunch of guillotines. And the name of his domain expansion, at least in this translation from TCB Scans, is Forced Suicide Punishment, which is referring to back when emperors would let people commit suicide instead of suffering the disgrace of being executed for some sort of offense. Now, I'm not going to have this up on screen because I'm really fucking paranoid about, copyright strikes. You know how Shueisha is. So I'm just going to have a color spread that Euler did from Higuruma's introduction chapter. But if you guys have read the chapter, why haven't you read the chapter if you're here? You know what it looks like. It's fucking awesome. But the most interesting thing about this domain is sort of how it works. Now, Higuruma having a domain expansion is kind of crazy, because he's not one of the ancient sorcerers. So he doesn't have, a whole lifetime of experience, and he's not from the golden age of sorcerers. And he's only had a curse technique for, a week or two, maybe? Not very long, a week and a half tops, I think. So how the fuck does he already have domain expansion? This dude's not Mahito. Because, we know how Mahito was. So this is where we get into a little bit of lore from Tengen, the All-Knowing. And we find out that domains in the past were actually a very common thing. And the reason they were so common was because they weren't focused on the whole guaranteed hit thing that we have with most current domains. The type of guaranteed hit like with Idle Transfiguration or Gojo's Infinity, where, if you're stuck in here, you're fucked. You're probably going to die unless you have Simple Domain, or you can activate your own domain and do a tug of war. In the past, domains were more of a thing for establishing a set of rules that a person had to abide by. Pretty much, if you're in my domain, you have to abide by my rules. But there's no kill thing in there. It was pretty much just to force someone to fight on your terms. So the example they use is two guys having a sumo match, and the rule is if you move from the spot, you lose, basically. So the conditions for Higuruma's domain is that you cannot commit any acts of violence in here. We can't harm each other. And what we're going to do is we're going to have a little court trial. You have been accused of a crime. And Judgement, my Shikigami here, knows all about you. It knows the crime, and I've been given a little piece of evidence. You are able to make some kind of defense or confess to your crime, and we're gonna see if I can find you guilty or prove that you're innocent, or, just find you not guilty. And then as far as we can tell, if you are found guilty, there is a detraction. You're debuffed. So this domain is kind of more complicated than a normal modern domain, but it's not lethal. It's more, this exists to make your life really difficult, which is very interesting. It's interesting that there is such a range to what domains can do. It makes sense. We know that the way Jujutsu works, it's pretty much just all give and take. So it would make sense that if a domain isn't doing something as crazy as killing someone, it would be way easier to do it. So that's just really interesting. I find this fascinating. This is a really interesting addition to how domain expansions work, because basically this means that Gege can get way more fucking creative with domain expansions. It was already really cool how domain expansions, you basically have an instant change to the environment of a fight. It's interesting to see how you have this physical embodiment of the character who's using the domain expansion, but now it's, now we have to do a little bit of strategizing, we do a little bit of mind games. It's like how Kirara's curse technique was something that required a lot of big brain plays to figure out. Now domain expansions are going to be more of like kind of a puzzle thing, and that sounds like it's going to be a lot of fun. So I'm a very big fan of this. So just for this alone, this chapter is really good in my eyes. Now before we get into Yuji's trial, I feel like, since this is basically like the halfway point through the video, I might as well use this opportunity to give a shout out to my wonderful patrons. Special thanks to Fuse, Neo, Dijon Redden, Anthony Chavez, Honey Mustard, Zach Rowitz, Kagod, Chris Redfield, Scratch23, Rat, Ryzen 4K, Artist, Mac Campaign, Wave of Manga, and Chuck's Feed and Seed. Thank you all very much for supporting me on Patreon. I greatly appreciate it. And if you too want to get a shout out at some point during videos, or access to reviews for solo leveling in the Boxer, you can always become a patron as well. There's a link to my Patreon down in the description. The Boxer has been back from hiatus recently, at least on Webtoon, so if you're interested in reviews for that, definitely check out the Patreon. Now, Yuji is on trial for a very serious offense here. He's on trial for suspicion of entering the pachinko shop Maji Vegas as a customer on July 16th, 2017, despite being under the age of 18. Yes, that's right, the very grievous offense of underage gambling. Now, this is great, and I'll tell you why this is great. All the way back in chapter 64, a whole 100 chapters ago. Chapter 64 is one of the best chapters in the series, by the way. It's the downtime chapter where we find out about the girl that had a crush on Yuji. It was great. But in that chapter, it's implied that Yuji went to a pachinko shop and, did gambling and won stuff. And apparently, the editors told Gege, scrap this from the chapter. We can't have our main character break the law and then play it off as kind of a funny, jokey, not serious thing. So Gege was like, okay, and then just put it in the chapter anyway. So I think it's great that this sort of little, very subtle joke thing is now being brought back here as an actual serious plot point for this chapter. I just really like that. I think that's really good. Higuruma is here to be a critique of the Japanese legal system, and maybe you could argue Japanese culture. So now we're here to talk about how fucking ridiculous it is that Yuji's here on trial for going into a pachinko place. So we find out, based on this chapter, that Yuji has very clearly never played Ace Attorney, because he doesn't stage a great defense. He argues that, I went into that place to go to the bathroom, because he doesn't know what the evidence that Higuruma has is. So he figures, listen, if they've got security camera footage of me going into the place, I can say, oh yeah, I went in, but I didn't gamble, I went to the bathroom. However, what Yuji really should have done was just give a bold-faced denial. I've never even heard of Maji Vegas. Because the piece of evidence that Higuruma has is a photo of Yuji going to an exchange place to exchange his winnings for cash. Because those are separate businesses. Actual exchange stores are not illegal, so a bunch of different places will just use them. So Yuji could have just argued, oh yeah, I went to that exchange place for some other reason, and he would have been found not guilty. Now, the reason Yuji didn't just confess is because it's not clear if there's a reduced sentence here. Don't know if you get plea deals or anything in Higuruma's domain. The court of forced suicide punishment may or may not have plea deals. Who knows? So he had no idea if the punishment would be the same whether or not he confessed to the crime. But he's found guilty. Now, before I get into the punishment that Yuji receives, it should be of note that the judgment is here judging Yuji. Apparently, the most grievous offense that Yuji has committed was underage gambling. Judgment is not having Sukuna on trial. Now, the biggest crime that Yuji thinks he may have committed, the biggest crime associated with him, is Sukuna's rampage during the Shibuya incident, but he's not on trial for that. So either Judgment just finds whatever crime he committed first, or it recognizes Sukuna as a completely separate individual from Yuji, which would make sense. Sukuna is a completely different entity that's inhabiting Yuji's body. That entity was the one controlling Yuji's body at the time. So, Sukuna's not the one on trial here. Now, maybe if Sukuna comes out in some way, I don't know, maybe we'll finally see the 60-second no killing people pact put into use. Maybe then Sukuna will be put on trial, and Sukuna can't harm him, though I guess if Sukuna just activated his domain, then it would kind of nullify that. But interesting that Judgment does not hold him on trial for that. Maybe we're going to see, the people of Japan versus Ryomen Sukuna. That would certainly be a very interesting case to see. I feel like that's definitely something we could have here, because I feel like the biggest draw of having Yuji versus Higuruma is how Higuruma would view the crimes that Yuji believes he is responsible for. I think that's the most interesting opportunity we have here with this fight and these two characters interacting. Now, the punishment Yuji receives for his crime is confiscation. He's no longer able to summon up and control his cursed energy, and as a result, he's not really able to defend himself or amp his physical abilities, which are already really high, as Higuruma points out. So that's kind of a really big detriment. No Divergent Fist, no Black Flash. Yuji's just fighting with pure physical strength, which he can do already, but still. That would be a huge detriment to, basically anyone else except for Maki. So that's pretty strong. Now I have to wonder, would confiscation always be the punishment? Or is it, fitting for the crime? Is it proportionate to the crime? If you were on trial for murder, would you just die or something? Would you just receive, some kind of grievous injury? Would you be decapitated by one of these guillotines? I wonder. There's a lot to wonder about Higuruma's domain expansion. There are a lot of possibilities with Higuruma's powers. So this chapter's really good because it sets up a lot more possibilities, in addition to just being really good with what's in it already. So I'm very curious and excited to see what is going to be happening with the rest of this fight. I don't think any of us really care that much about Megumi versus Reggie and Remy. It's like, the appeal of that is, oh yeah, we're going to see Megumi murder these morons. In this case, it's, let's see how these two people that have experienced moral dilemmas recently, what happens when these two face off against each other? Higuruma is absolutely fantastic already. So him just kind of being here is great. I mean, this dude has had fully fledged appearances in 3 chapters, 3 chapters in which he's an actual character, not just his first appearance. And they've all been great. They've all been absolutely wonderful. So, he's one of the best new characters. He's one of the best characters in general now. I mean, when a character's mere presence in a chapter just kind of gives it a bunch of points in terms of quality, you know they're really good. So, I'm very excited, as always, to see more of what we're going to get from Higuruma. And I'm quite curious to see how Yuji plans on getting out of the situation, and how exactly he plans on convincing Higuruma to join their side, or at the very least, spend his points for them. So with that, that's all I've got to say for this week's review. If you enjoyed, please be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and click that notification bell so you don't miss any of my uploads. I do Jujutsu Kaisen chapter reactions and reviews every week. If you enjoy discussing Jujutsu Kaisen with other people, or you just enjoy the content I produce on this channel, I highly suggest you check out my Discord server. I have a link to that down in the description. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys around. Take care.